Okay, so you've seen the headlines, right? Vegan restaurants are closing. The plant-based bubble has burst. It seems to be everywhere. But then, at the very same time, you've got governments and scientists telling us that we urgently, and I mean urgently, need to eat less meat. So what is the real story here? Is this whole thing just a passing fad, or are we actually watching the messy, complicated first steps of a global food revolution?
And look, that's not a quote from some food blogger. This is a powerful statement, and it comes from a report by the UK's Climate Change Committee. We're talking about a group of top scientists and experts who advise the government. This really sets the stage for why this whole conversation is so incredibly important. The stakes are way, way higher than just what's for dinner. So let's get into it. Why this big push for plant-based eating? Well, it's not some random trend. It's actually a direct response to some of the biggest challenges we're facing as a planet. And we're going to use the UK as a perfect case study to see exactly how this is playing out. Again, this isn't some fringe movement we're talking about. This is the UK's Climate Change Committee. These are the folks advising the government on how to actually hit its climate goals, and they've literally built dietary change right into the national strategy.
And their targets are really specific and honestly pretty ambitious. I mean, a 20% cut in meat and dairy by 2030, and then a 35% reduction in meat by 2050. That is a massive shift in how an entire country eats, and it's supposed to happen in a very, very short amount of time.
So what's driving all this? Well, it really boils down to three main things. First, the enormous greenhouse gas emissions that come from livestock. Second, the huge challenge of how to feed a growing global population sustainably. And third, well, it's our own health, the clear benefits of cutting down on processed and red meat.
Okay, so if the experts are all telling us to eat less meat, who's actually listening? The answer might really surprise you, and it gets right to the heart of whether these plant-based brands are even targeting the right people in the first place. You've probably heard this a million times. Oh, that plant-based stuff, that's just for vegans, right? But when you actually dig into the data, that idea, it just completely falls apart.
Just think about it for a second. According to YouGov, vegans only make up about 2 to 3% of the UK population. That is simply not a big enough group of people to support a multi-billion-dollar global industry. No way.
So, where's the real growth coming from? It's from omnivores. You know, most of us, people who still eat meat but are consciously trying to cut back. You might call them flexitarians, and they are the true engine driving this entire market forward.
And this isn't just a one-off thing they try. This number is absolutely key. Nearly 3/4 of the people who buy plant-based meat are repeat customers. They're buying it multiple times a month. For them, it's becoming a totally normal part of their shopping routine. Okay, wait a minute. So if the customer base is actually broad and it's growing, and these people are buying the products regularly, then what's going on? Why are we seeing all these headlines about high-profile vegan restaurants shutting down and sales slumping for major brands? This is where the story gets really complicated. All right, let's talk about the backlash. Because despite all those really strong underlying drivers we just covered, the plant-based movement is facing some serious headwinds. Some are even calling it a full-blown identity crisis. It feels like the optimism from a few years ago has been hit with a serious dose of reality. The path to mainstream adoption is turning out to be way bumpier than anyone thought. You know, it's not just about the food anymore. There's a real cultural pushback happening. And the evidence is pretty hard to ignore. We're seeing independent vegan restaurants closing at an alarming rate. And get this, even the world-famous Michelin-starred 11 Madison Park, which famously went fully vegan, quietly had to reintroduce some animal products. You combine that with declining sales for some big brands, and it points to a movement that's really, really struggling. This quote from an EnviroLink summary just hits the nail on the head. The movement is kind of caught between its niche activist roots and its mainstream dreams, and that's creating this huge struggle with its public identity. So now we've got two completely different stories, don't we? On one hand, you have this urgent, scientifically backed reason to eat less meat. And on the other, you have a cultural backlash and a struggling market. How can both of these things possibly be true at the same time?
It's almost like the industry is in a giant tug of war. You've got these powerful headwinds, the cultural backlash, the fact that these products are often more expensive, and even pro-meat trends on social media. But then you also have these incredibly strong tailwinds, the climate and health needs, and those aren't going anywhere. So how do you navigate that? Well, proponents like the Good Food Institute say the key is something they call the simple switch. The goal isn't to force everyone to become a vegan chef overnight. No, it's about giving people products they can easily swap into the meals they already know and love. Just take a look at this. You can still make a burger, you can still make chili or a pasta bolognese. You just use a different core ingredient. This whole approach is about meeting people where they are, instead of asking them to make some huge, intimidating lifestyle change.
So after all of this, where does that leave us? It really feels like we're standing at a crossroads, a moment that's going to decide if plant-based food becomes a fundamental part of our food system or if it just stays a niche market.
The story of plant-based food isn't a simple one of failure or success. It's an evolution. And right now, it's facing very real challenges with price, with perception, and with culture. But it's also built on undeniable global needs, and these next few years will be absolutely critical in deciding where it all goes from here. So I'll just leave you with this question. Are we watching the end of a short-lived trend, or are we just witnessing the messy, complicated, but totally necessary first steps of a food revolution that is only just getting started? Because as all this data shows, the answer is far from simple.